get started, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. You guys are doing okay, inshallah? If I can get some indication that you're there. Yes, thank you, sisters. MashaAllah. Turning on your camera. Can you hear me fine, inshallah? Yeah, awesome. Okay, I want to start off just quickly with three questions that we had left unanswered in the last class. I said that I would kind of look into it and get back to you. They were specifically to do with Ayatollah Sistani's opinion on what is one wash. If you recall, we said that to wash once is wajib for the face and the hands. To wash twice is either mustahab or permissible. Different maraja say different things. But then to wash three times is not allowed. And I'm going to somehow explain what exactly that means. That is it going to break your wudu or not? Assalamu alaikum to the sisters who are just joining us. But just to kind of clarify, I was looking into what Ayatollah Sistani says about what constitutes one wash. And he says that it is, like I said, it's not as simple as Ayatollah Khamenei. Ayatollah Khamenei says it just all goes back to your intention. Ayatollah Sistani says no, if you have washed the entire body part with the niyat of like I'm washing it as part of wudu, then once you're done washing that body part, it's one wash is done. Okay, so it doesn't go back to the intention for Ayatollah Sistani. It actually goes back to the reality of have you finished washing everything or not. Okay, so there's an important difference here in the explanation of what constitutes one wash. The important thing to keep in mind, sisters, is that if you wash your left hand three times, you have a big problem because that third wash is not really part of the wudu. It's not something legislated as part of wudu. So the water that you now have on your hands is not water of wudu and you can't do masah. Okay, so generally if you do it in the left hand, it's gonna make your wudu invalid. There were two other questions. One question was to do with the idea of can I wash my hand in a downwards direction, but first I wash the bottom part and then I wash the top part where the elbow is. I asked somebody in the office of Ayatollah Sistani and they said, no, you can't do that. And so generally, like I think my understanding is this is that scholar who I asked, this is his implementation of the idea of washing from top to bottom. So the condition that we have in wudu is you have to wash from the elbow down to the fingertips. Okay, so if somebody is washing the bottom half, like let's say like, from their, I don't know, middle of their arm here down to their fingertips, and then later they go back and wash the elbow part, that wouldn't be, if somebody looks at you doing that, they wouldn't say you're washing from top to bottom. So that's problematic. That was another question. Third question was this idea of sisters that have long hair doing masah on hair that's on the top of their head. Do you need to kind of dig down to the roots of your hair? And the answer was no. If that is hair that is always there on the top of your head, it's not like it is hair that sits on the side or dingles down in front of your head, in front of your face, sorry. If it's just hair that's always up there, then that's fine. You don't need to dig down to the root of the hair. Okay, so those were some outstanding questions. Inshallah, anytime you guys have questions about what we're talking about, if something's unclear, I don't know the answer, even other ahkam questions, if you're comfortable asking me, you can always, inshallah, reach out and I can try to look into the answer for you. Okay. Again, I will humbly request everybody to turn on their camera, please, as we get started. I want to now show, just call out, mashallah, a lot of you guys did the homework. It was very nice to see that, there was such good participation. I think most people, or if not, then about half of you, did do the homework assignment that I had given. I'm just gonna show, I didn't, get a chance to, and we wouldn't have time to look at all the uh, contributions, all the homework assignments that you guys submitted. Just two examples. One is of a sister that had done the biography of Ayatollah Sistani. May Allah protect him. In this last week, by the way, you guys all saw the news. Ayatollah Sistani's wife passed away. I don't know if you guys saw, when I saw the message, I got really scared for a second. Like I saw his picture and it said "Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un." But may Allah protect him. His wife passed away. May Allah bless her. These are this. I thought this was really nice. The sister that put this together talked first of all about some of his works. These works, by the way, a lot of these kind of like simple ahkam books, they may be written by his students or by his office. It may be somehow him overlooking it. Whatever, these are attributed to him. So these are books of his. Um, Somebody like him, Ayatollah Sistani, so many different organizations and institutions are going to be somehow under his, under his name. Like there's a huge, I don't know how to explain, like you guys know these maraja of taqlid have huge, huge organizations and entire kind of setups that are under him, under scholars related to him. Or, for example, he has a son-in-law here in Iran called Shahristani, Jawad Shahristani. Jawad Shahristani runs many different charity projects and things. So here the sister has put some of these things. Al-Ain, you guys know that, for example, JCC in Toronto, they send all of their khums money to Al Ain because it's a legitimate orphanage charity where they can show the Canadian government that these are the orphans that we are helping. And because it's under Ayatollah Sistani, he has given permission that the khums money can be given to that. There was the sister who wrote this biography put some incidents that happened about 20 years ago. In the year 2004, Ayatollah Sistani had gone to the United Kingdom for like a operation, I think a heart surgery or something like that. At that time, when he left Iraq, all of a sudden tensions flared up between Muqtada Sadr and the American army. And it was really bad. There was a lot of violence in the city of Najaf, and the soldiers of Muqtada Sadr had barricaded themselves in the Haram. When Ayatollah Sistani, just him coming back ended that tension. So, his presence was so important over there that when he was there, everything was okay. 10 years later, so now this is about 10 years ago, again, very, very important role that Ayatollah Sistani played in inspiring the Iraqis to mobilize themselves and fight against Daesh. This was really outstanding. It was something that had it not happened, the whole country of Iraq might have fallen. These guys were close to Baghdad. And it was with this Hashd al-Sha'bi, with the support of Iran, that these guys were able to repel the Daesh and somehow save the entire country. So Ayatollah Sistani's role has really, really been important. May Allah protect him, give him a long life. There are a lot of evil people within the Shia community who are just waiting for him to die. And may Allah not let that happen soon, but one day when he does pass away, there's probably going to be a big fitna that is waiting for us, where people are going to say that, oh, we don't need to do taqleed anymore and stuff like that. Or they have other options ready that they want people to do taqleed of who are not that qualified. Anyways, that was an example of one of the homework contributions about Ayatollah Sistani. Here's another one that two of the sisters did about Ayatollah Khamenei. I thought I would also just highlight some of these points. This was the sisters that did this had a lot of different slides or points about Ayatollah Khamenei. One of them was about his education. It's really a beautiful story, so I thought I would highlight it that Ayatollah Khamenei was in his early 20s. He was like 19 years old, early 20s when he was studying in the city of Qum. Okay, he initially was from Mashhad from a very young age. He had already studied a lot in the Hawza. From when he was like 16 years old, he was at the highest level of studying in the Hawza of Mashhad, Baht al-Kharij. At one point, he wanted to go to Najaf. His father didn't give him permission, so he remained in Iran. He was in the city of Qum benefiting from Imam Khomeini, Ayatollah Ha'iri, Ha'iri Yazdi, who the sisters have put the name here. This is the son of the founder of the Hawza. Okay, so there's somebody who maybe you've heard his name, Abdul Karim Ha'iri. He's somehow attributed to have brought the Hawza of Qum back to life about 100 years ago when he moved to the city of Qum. He invited many scholars and his students, people like Imam Khomeini, people like Sayyid Gul Paygani, Araki, these students of his and other scholars he invited, they somehow brought the Hawza of Qum back to life again after a period of when the Hawza was not so important and active. So this guy's son, Murtada Ha'iri, was a personal teacher of Ayatollah Khamenei. And the beautiful story is that when he was about 25 years old, he had a bright future ahead of him, doing really well in the Hawza of Qum. Qum was the place for him to be, to succeed, to teach and become a great mujtahid. His teachers had a lot of hope in him. He left everything to go back to Mashhad and take care of his father. His father was going blind, and his father really needed help. And so even though it was very difficult for him to leave that, opportunity he had in Qum, he left it all aside for the sake of Allah. He went back to Mashhad and he spent a lot of time. He kept up his studies, he kept up his tabligh, teaching, but he spent a lot of time taking care of his father. And he himself says, as the sisters who did this homework assignment have quoted him, that if there have been any successes in my life, they all go back to God's blessings favored upon me because of my dutiful caring of my parents. That's really, really like a lesson for our time that, this huge, important leader of Islam, he himself says that if I have any blessings, it's because of how I treated my parents in my life. Okay, I'll pause here if there's any questions, any comments. I have a story as well that I wanted to share with you about Imam Khomeini doing wudu. And then, inshallah, if there's no questions or comments, we can enter some ahkam discussions about wudu for today, inshallah. There's a story that the son-in-law of Imam Khomeini, Dr. Burujardi, he once saw his son, so that's Imam Khomeini's grandson. He sees his son like walking around at home with a small vial, a small glass bottle for medicine. So he asks his son, "What are you doing? What's the deal? What is this?" And his son tells him that my school friends told me to try to gather some of the water, some of the leftover water when Imam Khomeini does wudu for barakah. They wanted that water. And so I put I put like a tray under Imam when he was doing wudu, and I tried to gather the water, but there was so little water that I had to like gather it with a syringe. And I tried to, it was so small, I put it in this glass bottle for medicine, and that too, it didn't even fill up this bottle. And then when I asked Imam Khomeini, he said something like this, like he talked to his grandfather that this is how little wudu, how little water you leave. And Imam said, yeah, when I do the wajib, he said this, that Imam smiled and said, yeah, this is the leftover water from when I do the wajib wudu, basically. Okay. So, inshallah, next week we'll talk about the mustahabbat of wudu. One of the mustahabbat of wudu is to try to use less water. And, it is possible. Maybe we're used to nowadays, just turning the tap on and using tons of water, but it's better if we can try to limit the usage of water. Okay, if there's any questions, please feel free at any time to, just take up the mic or talk in the chat. My plan for today, sisters, is to talk a little bit more in detail about the conditions of wudu. And as you can see on this slide, we'll divide it into four. These conditions or overall the ahkam, they can be divided in different ways. That's not that big of a deal. This division I'm going to go through will talk first of all about conditions of the water of wudu, then the body parts. Thirdly, the manner, the way in which you perform wudu, and then some final points about the person who's doing wudu. And then if we have time, inshallah, I think we will have time. We'll also talk about what you do wudu for. Guys, these are all very obvious, easy ahkam, but inshallah, it'll be a good reminder. Maybe some of the details will be a little bit kind of interesting for you to hear. And then next week, inshallah, we'll finish the discussion of wudu with things like having doubt when you're doing wudu, or the mustahabbat of wudu, or wudu jabira. That's like a bit of a complicated thing that if you're injured, how do you do wudu if you have a bandage? So inshallah, next week we'll wrap up the discussion on wudu, and then the following week we'll talk about ghusl, inshallah. Okay, so first of all, when it comes to the conditions of the water of wudu, there's three conditions we got to keep in mind. And then, yeah, let me just kind of list through these conditions right now. First of all, the water has to be tahir. We haven't talked about najasat and taharat yet, but you guys know what that means. It means that, there can't have been blood, there can't have been some kind of, if it was like a small vessel of water, if a drop of blood spills in it, the entire water becomes najis. Okay, you can't use najis water for wudu. The details of the different types of water and how water can exactly become najis, we'll talk about all that later. But generally, you have an idea, so it's easy, inshallah, clear if I say that what the water that you're using for wudu has to be tahir, has to be pak. It cannot be najis. Second thing is that the water has to be permissible. You have to be allowed to use that water. Again, there's some details here. Ayatollah Sistani has stuff about how, okay, if you didn't know, if the water was stolen water and you didn't steal it, you didn't know it was stolen, it's okay. But generally, like without going into some of these details, overall, one of the conditions of the water of wudu is that it has to be permissible. I have to have permission to use it. So this can be an issue. Apparently, it's not allowed. For example, I have seen myself in the haram in Qum, you have water, or in the past at least, yeah, probably now too, harams overall, you have water that's designated for drinking water. And there's clear signs that say this water is just for drinking water, just for drinking. So somebody should not do wudu with that water because that water has been somehow, in Qum, like it's not like Canada where all the water is good to drink. The default water in the tap is not that clean, and people prefer to use filtered water when you drink. So people have, somehow put the water through filtration or got clean drinking water. That's just been designated in the haram for drinking. You can't use that then for wudu. Okay, I mean, if it's the case that you don't have permission, I think this would apply. This would be an instance of that where you don't have permission to use that water for wudu, so you can't. Okay. The third one is again a discussion about water that we haven't gone into, but it's pretty straightforward. I'll just explain it right now. This is the idea that water can be mutlaq or mudaf. Is very easy to understand because when we say mudaf water in English, we wouldn't even call that water. Like, this is more for like Arabic or Farsi, where you can use the word water for things like juice or rose water or I don't know, other things that are not normal water. There's the idea that there are types of water where you can just call it water, and that in Arabic is called ma'ul mutlaq. Abi mutlaq in Farsi. Okay, so as opposed to what? As opposed to juice, as opposed to, I don't know, rose water, where you can't just call it water. You have to also clarify that it is a certain type of water, rose water. It is a certain type of water, water from, I don't know, this fruit or something. Obviously, you can do wudu with those. You can do wudu with anything that is called water. Doesn't matter if it's salt water from the ocean or rainwater or water from a river. These are all types of water that you can actually just call them water. And, the term water is correct, regardless of whether it's salt water or sweet water or from a well or from a river. It doesn't matter. So these are three conditions that the water that we're using for wudu has to be tahir, pure, permissible to use, mubah, and mutlaq, as I just explained. Again, we have like conditions about the vessel, but I don't think that's important. Nowadays, we don't really use vessels. If you guys go back to this picture of Imam Khomeini, you see how he has like a jug that he's doing water out of. If we were ever using a jug to do water, a vessel, then again, there's discussions about whether that vessel needs to be permissible and it cannot be made out of gold or silver. Again, there's details here. Ayatollah Sistani says, okay, like it's haram to do that, but if you do that, if you use a vessel that's gold, made of gold, if you use a vessel that's stolen, you've done a sin, but your wudu is still valid. Like, these are details, but whatever. Like this doesn't apply to us, so there's no point going into it. You guys with me? Everybody following, inshallah? Make sense? Yeah. No questions, no comments? Okay. That was the conditions of the water itself. The next thing that I want to now tackle is the conditions of the body parts. We talked about this already last week a lot about the idea of a barrier. And so I have, we talked about makeup and oil and pen marks. I have a question about that, but just first of all, when we talk about conditions of the body parts, there's two over here. One is that, again, the body parts need to be tahir, not najis. And secondly, there should not be a barrier. The barrier is what we talked about last week. The idea of not being najis, it just means that before you wash your face or before you wash your hands, before you wipe your head, before you wipe your foot, you need to have removed any najasa. It doesn't have to be the case that it's tahir when you're starting your wudu, or it's always tahir through the course of your wudu. No, even if there's some najasa, you can make it tahir just before you wash it. Or if it becomes najis after you're done washing it, that's fine as well. Okay, so let's say I have like a drop of blood on my hand and I start my wudu. I do wudu of my face, I wash my face, and then just before I wash my hand, I make my hand tahir. That's fine. It's gonna be okay. I can just kind of make it tahir, put some water on it, make it pure, and then begin washing my hand, and my wudu would be okay. So it's just overall like the entire time that I'm washing it, it can't be najis. If it is najis, then I'm not allowed to do wudu like that. Like we had talked about how you can also do wudu by immersing your hand and your face in water. If you have like a huge amount of water, like a swimming pool or you're at a river, even if your hand is like bleeding, you could just immerse your entire hand in the river and it would be fine. That would wudu would be correct because the water is pure water that's gonna somehow purify your hand and that wudu would be okay. Because the amount of water is so much that the water is not gonna become najis when you immerse your hand in it. But anyways, this is something that it is a rule, but there are ways, inshallah, around it, and you can still, even if there was some najasa, you just make it tahir or immerse that body part in a huge amount of water, and your wudu would be okay. I hope that's clear. If anybody has any questions, again, like always, please feel free to ask. About the barrier, I have a question. Let's say somebody is not sure whether there was or whether there is a barrier. Let's say before you start wudu, you're not sure that, oh, do you have glue or paint or something on your hands? Or let's say after you finish wudu, you see a barrier, you see some paint on your hands later on, and you're thinking, oh my God, was this there when I did wudu or not? What do you guys think? Anybody have any ideas about what the ahkam are in these situations? Do you need to redo your wudu or not? Hmm, I'm just gonna. This is related to the idea of doubts, which we will inshallah go into more detail later, but nonetheless, I thought it would be a interesting question to ask. Let's see, mashallah, lots of people have put things in the chat. One sister, Mariam, asked just before this question, I think, do all the body parts need to be pure or just the parts we wash in wudu? Yes, Sister Mariam, we're talking about the parts that you wash and wipe. Okay, so if your, I don't know, shoulder is bleeding or something, there's no problem at all. You can start wudu, finish wudu, your wudu is going to be okay. Okay. Does bleeding from a cut make wudu break? No, Sister Sarah, it doesn't break your wudu. Okay, maybe next week we'll also quickly go through what breaks your wudu. It doesn't break your wudu, but the point is that if you have a cut on your hand, for example, one of the conditions of washing your hand for wudu is that your hand needs to be tahir. So then, as I just explained, you have a couple of options. If you can make it tahir and then wash, you're good to go, or you can just immerse your hand in, like a huge amount of water. Okay, so Sister Masuma says if you're unsure about a barrier, you're okay. Fatima, I think you should be fine, but it's better to redo. Sister Hannah, if you see something after doing wudu and you aren't sure if it was there during wudu, you don't have to redo it. Yes, Sister Hannah is right over here that if the doubt is after wudu has finished, okay, and you don't know basically that was this there when you did wudu or not, you're definitely okay at this point. You can just assume your wudu is fine and you're good to go. The question is that when before you're doing wudu, if you have doubt, do you need to go and investigate or not? And at this point, there are some kind of details here. I'm looking at something from Ayatollah Khamenei. I don't think it would be different with Ayatollah Sistani, although I should double check this. But he has some details here. He says, for example, if you know that if you definitely are sure that there was a barrier earlier, let's say it's like Dhuhr time, and you remember definitely at 10 a.m. I had glue on my fingers. In this situation, you would have to double check that have you removed that glue now or not? Okay, that's one thing. Beyond that, even if there is a very strong chance, there's like a logical chance that you may have a barrier. Okay, so for example, let's say you were painting, and so now there is a good chance that you may have got some paint on your fingers. Again, even in this situation, you don't know that it happened for sure, but because there's like a logical chance you may have a barrier, you do need to kind of double check and investigate and look at your fingers carefully. In other situations, you don't need to worry about it. Okay, so normally before wudu, if you're not sure you have a barrier or not, you don't need to investigate unless it's one of those two situations where you knew definitely there was a barrier earlier on, or you're just in a situation where there's a logical chance that you may have a barrier. Make sense? Okay, inshallah. Okay, the next discussion was, yeah, this is important. This is the idea of now the way that we do wudu has certain conditions. One of them is the idea of sequence, tartib, that first you have to wash your face, and then your right hand, and then your left hand, and then you do the masah of your head, and then your feet. As I indicated to you guys last week, specifically for the feet, Ayatollah Sistani says you can do both your feet at the same time. I don't think Ayatollah Khamenei says that. So when we talk about sequence, there is this subtle difference amongst marajid that is there a sequence necessary between the right foot and the left foot or not? Okay, that's one rule. The other rule that's important to understand and clarify is the idea of muwalat, continuity. This is going to be as opposed to ghusl. When we learn about ghusl, we'll see that there's no concept of continuity, muwalat in ghusl. For ghusl, you can wash your head and then come back like 5 hours later and wash your right side, and then come back a few hours later and then wash your left side, and your wudu would be totally valid. Okay, as opposed to that, sorry, your ghusl would be totally valid. As opposed to that, wudu has this condition that if you leave a large gap in the middle of your wudu is broken. Now the question is, how do we define what a large gap is? What constitutes the definition of muwalat? Okay, here again, there's a subtle difference between maraji, where some of them, like Ayatollah Sistani, he says that in normal circumstances, it's just an urfi thing. This is a really important term to kind of understand. It will come up again and again in our ahkam, the idea of urf. Yeah, I'm going to just put it in the chat. It's like the common perception. So basically, the marja is telling you when he uses this term that this is not my job. I'm not supposed to figure these things out for you. You need to figure this out. That what is the common understanding of this term? It's not Ayatollah Sistani's job to tell us. So Ayatollah Sistani says in normal circumstances, the idea of continuity, mualat, is just an urfi concept that if you take a long break in the middle of your wudu is broken. You need to start over. But if you just pause for a moment, that's going to be fine. Okay, makes sense? Other marajit define it. They say that mualat means that your previous body parts that you were washing or wiping cannot dry up. So if you take such a long break after you finish washing your face before you wash your hands, that your face completely dries up, then you've lost your mualat. But if you just waited for like a minute and your face is still wet, then that's fine. You still have the condition of mualat. So Ayatollah Khamenei explains it like that, as I think that's probably the normal explanation. But Ayatollah Sistani says that it's normally an urfi thing, and only in rare, weird circumstances, when something all of a sudden happens, you run out of water, something strange happens, then this condition that the other maraja are talking about your previous body part drying up, then that applies for Ayatollah Sistani. Okay. A bit of a complicated thing, but yeah. So again, just to summarize, Ayatollah Khamenei and lots of other marajid, they define mualat with this concept of the previous body part drying up. Whereas Ayatollah Sistani says normally, no, it's just this urfi concept of continuity. So there's a big difference, I think. Like if you were to, in Toronto where it's cold, if you were to pause for 5 minutes, your previous body part is probably still going to be wet. So from a Urfi perspective, you've probably lost mu'alat after 5 minutes. But if we're using that criteria of Ayatollah Khamenei, you still have mu'alat. Okay? So there is a big thamara. There is going to be a difference here. Another condition, when it comes to the manner in which we perform wudu, there is a condition here that we have to perform wudu ourselves. What does that mean? Take a look at this picture. This guy in the hospital lying down, he can't do wudu himself. So in that situation, obviously he's allowed to get the help. He has to get the help of somebody else. But normally, if we are able to, we have to do it ourselves. Okay, so there's some details here. One of the details is, what about the prerequisites? Okay, you know what? I'll ask you guys that as a question in a moment. I'll come back to that. Um, one of the details here is that, okay, sorry, there's a question in the chat. Sister Sarah has asked a question. I have heard that if one walks a certain number of steps away from their wudu. Sister Sarah, I had that as a question. So inshallah, I'm gonna ask you guys that question and then I can hear from you and then inshallah I'll tell you what the answer is. Okay, just one point about this thing about getting help. So like I said, if you are able to, you got to do wudu yourself. If you're not able to, somebody else helps you. Now here there is a discussion amongst Marajid that does the helper, so this young man standing in the picture, for example, does he have to do niyat of wudu or not? Ayatollah Khamenei, as far as I saw, he says no, like that's not like Imam Khomeini. Actually, I didn't read anything from Ayatollah Khamenei, but I'm guessing it's like Imam Khomeini. Imam Khomeini in the notes that you saw that I sent by email, he says that no, there's no need for the helper to make a niyyah. The niyyah is just the sick person would make niyyah that I'm doing wudu, and then the helper is helping him. Okay. Ayatollah Sistani says no, if it reaches a level where that guy is helping you so much that it's like he's making you do wudu, you no longer even say that you are doing wudu with help. It's more like he's just making you do wudu. You're not doing anything yourself. At this point now, both people should make niyyah of wudu. It's a technical discussion. As I told you guys, niyyah is just like you know what you're doing. That means you have niyyah. It's not something too practical, but it's something Manajid discussed that do both people need to make a niyyah or is it just the sick person who's getting help? Okay. I'm going to come back to the question, Sister Sarah. Another question, Sister Fatima, is one allowed to walk to another area? Same question that Sister Sarah asked. Inshallah, I'm going to come back to that question. Last of the four conditions is this idea of conditions that go back to the individual themselves. Okay, what does this mean? Again, niyyah was one of the conditions that this division that I'm looking at according to the book that I'm following, it puts Nia over here. Nia, we talked about Nia last week. I won't go into Nia again. The thing that's important to know is that water should not be harmful. Okay, if water is harmful for you to use, then you do tayammum. You don't do wudu. Look at this poor guy in the picture. He has some really bad pain in his eye. If he puts water on his eye, he's going to injure himself. He can't do wudu. He's not supposed to do wudu. He's supposed to do tayammum. Okay? I have a bunch of questions now for you guys. I want you to take a minute and try to answer these questions. Okay, one of the questions is what two of the sisters put in the chat about walking over to, like, let's say you finish washing your face and hands before you do masah, you want to sit down. So you walk across the room and you sit down in a chair and then you do masah while you're sitting. Is that going to be okay or not? Another question is that look at this cartoon image. What if a lady is doing wudu in front of non-mahram men? So this is a problem. The men can look at her hands. Is that wudu going to be valid or invalid? What about eating? What if I'm doing wudu and I'm, like finishing my lunch and quickly trying to make it for Salat al-Jama'ah? Is that going to be a problem or not? And then the question I just mentioned about harm, we can add that as like a fourth question over here that I'm just going to add it to the slides that if you're not sure that there is harm in doing wudu, is it okay or not? So take a minute, think about these questions, sisters, and then inshallah, I want to hear from you guys. Inshallah, as soon as anybody wants, they can put the answers in the chat. They can take up the mic. I haven't heard from anybody the whole class. So, Bismillah, feel free to also talk and take up the mic and tell me what you're thinking about these questions. Sister Mariam, for the second question, I think the wudu is valid, but she gets a sin for revealing certain body parts. Yes, Sister Mariam is correct. Okay, we have to divide two different things over here. There is the idea of the sihha or the butlan, the validity of the action. And then there's the idea of committing a sin. These are not always connected in Islam. Let me give you an example. In the 58th surah of the Quran, called Surah Al-Mujadilah, it starts off with a story of a man who did something called dhihar. Dhihar was an ancient practice that the Arabs used to have where a husband would tell his wife that you are like the back of my mother. And that would make the wife haram for that husband. Right? In Islam, we have ahkam around this, as the verses of Quran indicate, the opening verses of Surah Al-Mujadilah, that this is something haram, but it has a consequence. It causes certain repercussions. So, like the same way, sometimes an action could be haram in a taklifi sense, you're committing a sin, but it still is a valid action that has certain conditions. You could take a loan. Let's say you go and take an interest loan. You guys go to TD Bank, mashallah, and you take a loan with the niyyah that I am taking this loan as an interest loan and I'm okay paying the interest. Okay, there's different things that are maraja, different maraja have said different things we need to do. But if you make that kind of niyyah, that is haram. Nonetheless, it's still a valid loan. You still have to pay that loan back to TD Bank. It's still in the eyes of the Sharia, it's still a valid loan, even though it was haram with that kind of niyyah. My point being, as Sister Mariam told us over here, the wudu is still valid even though the sister is committing a sin. What about the other questions? Sister Asiya, for the first question, it might be based on urf again. If people around believe the person is done their wudu, putting the chair closer would fix this. As Sister Asiya has said, it goes back to what we just said about mu'alat. So you look at who your marja is and you look at what they have said about mu'alat, and if you have the condition of mu'alat, your wudu is fine. So if you follow Ayatollah Sistani, as Sister Asiya said, it's just a urfi understanding of continuity. I think I'm saying that right. And so, if you're walking just a few steps over, I don't think there should be a problem. But yeah, if you're walking across your entire house from one room to like two, three other rooms, maybe now somebody who's looking at you is going to say, you're finished your wudu. The continuity is lost, according to Ayatollah Sistani. And so, that's a problem then. Okay. Other questions?
I have a
Yeah,
quick question
please go ahead.
based on
Go
that
ahead.
question.
Yes.
For example, at work, if you're doing wudu, in like a public bathroom, for example, I
Hmm.
heard, I'm not sure if this is reliable, but I heard that um, you don't have to do masa of the feet. Like you can walk to somewhere, like for example, from work, I'm walking from the washroom to the prayer room, and then I do masa of the feet in the prayer room, instead of in the public bathroom. Is that allowed?
So you could definitely make that, that would definitely be okay according to Ayatollah Khamenei, because we just said the definition of muwalat for Ayatollah Khamenei is that the previous body parts are still wet, right? So I think what you could do if you believe that Ayatollah Khamenei and Ayatollah Sistani are at the same level of alamiya, as we had talked about in earlier lessons, even if you normally follow Ayatollah Sistani, you could say, okay, in this issue, I'm going to follow Ayatollah Khamenei, and then my wudu is valid. Otherwise, according to Ayatollah Sistani, I think it might be a problem. Because, if you're convinced that in the urf you no longer have continuity, you've now gone against Ayatollah Sistani's condition for the validity of wudu.
Okay, thank you. And also, if you were to do that, then do your hands have to be like still wet, like very wet to do the masa?
Not very wet, but wet enough to do masah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. No problem. Eating, what do you guys think? Easy question. Bismillah, Bismillah. Let me hear from you guys, sisters. Is eating okay? Eating, drinking when you're doing wudu? Not allowed. Eating. Oh, not allowed. Okay. Yeah. No, Sister Sarah, it was not one of the conditions. Yeah, Sister Masuma is correct. Okay, so we talked about continuity was this idea that you're continuing the action. No, it doesn't have to do, like, imagine somebody's looking at you doing wudu, whether you're eating or not, that doesn't affect that like continuity of the action. It's actually a good point, Sister Sarah. Like I haven't. No, it's okay. Like from what I've seen, explicitly, I found quotes that say it's okay. So no, it's not. Doesn't apparently affect the continuity. The idea behind continuity, Sister Sarah, is that the next action continues after the previous one. Your washing of your hands follows after the washing of the face. Now, simultaneously, you could be eating, you could be talking, that's okay. That doesn't break your wudu. Inshallah, does that make sense? Yeah, during prayer, we'll talk about prayer. Prayer has a certain form that, first of all, talking is like, and eating, they're probably explicitly mentioned as things that break the prayer. But the other thing is that prayer has a certain form that is obviously going to be broken if you start talking and eating and things like that. Okay, it goes against the kind of idea of what prayer is. But wudu is just this idea of washing certain body parts. It's not in line with the hudur al-qalb, with the attention, it's an act of worship. We want to somehow focus on God. But you're not going against the idea of wudu if you're eating or talking or, okay? Wudu is just idea, the main identity of what is wudu, the essence of wudu is like I'm washing these body parts and wiping these body parts. Yeah, you can have gum in your mouth while doing wudu. That's not a problem. Yeah. Okay. What about the harm thing? This is something that applies everywhere in the Sharia, not just in wudu. Even when it comes to fasting, when it comes to other things. What if I'm not sure that it's going to harm me? Do I do wudu or not? How about Sister Insia, Sister Sana? We haven't heard from you guys, other sisters who have not participated. What do you think? If water is, you're not sure it's going to harm you or not? Anybody? Mashallah, lots of sisters here. We're quiet. Avoid it to be safe. But Sister Masuma, my question is your wudu valid or not? Let's say you have doubt that maybe this water is going to harm me. Maybe I'm sick and I'm sensitive to cold water. The only wudu I can do is with cold water. I'm not sure, but I think it might harm me. Sister Waliya Fatima says it is valid. Okay. Is there maybe a specific measure for harm? Sister Fatima, good question. Guys, let me just inshallah give you the answer now. You can think about fasting as well. So maybe this would make it easier. Let's say you have doubt whether fasting is going to make you sick or is going to harm you or not. Do you fast in that situation? What do you guys think? The answer, sisters, is that you don't need to be certain, okay? As long as you have a logical like probability, a probability you really have doubt, and that doubt is based on like a reasonable doubt. It's not somebody who's like, got psychological issues where they doubt everything. No, like a reasonable kind of doubt that I think this may harm me. In that situation, you don't fast or you don't do wudu. You go and you do tayammum. You're not supposed to do wudu. You're not supposed to fast. Does that make sense? So it's not just about being. So over here, the question that comes up with fasting is that what about if a doctor tells you and you are not convinced? The word of the doctor is not important. It goes back to your own kind of understanding. The word of the doctor would normally give you that doubt, right? If a doctor tells you don't fast, it's harmful for you to fast. A mother is expecting a child, the doctor tells her don't fast, it's bad for you. Okay, that word of the doctor would probably cause, for most people, it would cause a kind of doubt, right? And as soon as you have that rational, reasonable doubt that maybe this is harmful for me, you shouldn't do it anymore. Make sense? Okay. Okay, sisters, quiet sisters today, mashallah. Last thing, inshallah, we want to talk about, and then I'll end, inshallah, with this, is just kind of going through the ideas, the actions that we need to do wudu for. And okay, not just need to do wudu for, but we can do wudu. What is my goal when I do wudu? Okay, what is my in Arabic? I think they say musawwigh or my ghaya. What is the thing I'm doing wudu for? Over here, we have a very easy kind of option. We can always just do wudu with the niyyah of wanting to be in the state of tahara. Okay? Even more than that, we can even do wudu to like renew wudu. Okay, like the idea of tajdeed of wudu is also something mustahab. Mhm. Yeah. Okay, so you can always just do wudu with that kind of niyyah that I want to do wudu to be in the state of tahara for the sake of Allah. Once you've done wudu, later on you can pray, you can touch the Quran, you can do tawaf, wajib, whatever you need to do wudu for. That's fine. You don't need to do wudu again. So this is kind of an easy thing to keep in mind that you can always do wudu just for the sake of Allah to be in the state of tahara. You can also have your niyyah that I'm doing wudu for the prayers that are coming up. Adhan hasn't entered, but I want to do wudu for the Dhuhr prayer. That's fine as well. Whether your niyyah is for the Dhuhr prayer or it's just to be in the state of tahara, all of that is going to be okay. There's a message in the chat. I'm just going to look at it. Follow up. Would doing wudu with the doubt of harm mean the wudu is batil? That's a good question, Sister Sarah. And there is some details here. Let me read to you what Ayatollah Sistani says about this, okay? Since you asked, just give me a second, I'll find it. Um, I don't know. I don't see it. There's something there. Inshallah, Sister Sarah, I'll get back to you. If I remember correctly, it's something like this that, you need a niyat of qurbat ilallah, right? So if somebody knows the ahkam is that they're not supposed to be doing wudu, they can't have that niyat of qurbat that, okay, I'm going against the ahkam and I'm doing wudu, qurbatan ilallah. That doesn't make sense. If you don't have the niyat of qurba, then definitely your wudu is not gonna be valid. Mm, So, yeah, okay. Um, Mm, yeah, I don't see it right now. It's somewhere here. I'm looking at the book of Ayatollah Sistani. I don't find it right now. It's something like that, Sister Sarah. I'll try to double check it and get back to you next week, but it's something like this. That, normally if you are aware of the ahkam, then you can't possibly have a niyat of qurbatan ilallah if you're going against the ahkam. And so no, your wudu is going to be invalid. But if somebody didn't know, for example, like they later find out that the wudu was harmful, I think in that situation it would be okay because they actually had the niyat of doing a correct wudu. Again, I'll double check that and try to get back to you. Okay. So going back to the idea of, what do we do wudu for? There's one discussion of what do we need wudu for or what is mustahab to have wudu for. And then there's another idea of like when I'm doing wudu, what is my niyyah? What am I doing wudu for? Okay, so that second question, I think I clarified, right? That you can do wudu, that I want to do wudu for prayer. I want to do wudu for touching the Quran. But you can even just do wudu to be in the state of tahara. You can even just do wudu that I want to do tajdeed of wudu. I was already in the state of wudu, I want to do wudu again. All of these kinds of niyat are going to be totally fine. In terms of what is it that we need wudu for, there are things that are wajib, such as prayer. Okay, so obviously to pray other than salat al-mayyit, all other types of prayer require wudu. Even there, when we learn about ahkam of salat later on, inshallah, there's a way that you have to perform some forgotten, missed parts of prayer. If you forget one sajda or you forget tashahhud, there's a way that you do qada of it at the end of prayer. Even for those qada parts, you need to do wudu. You need to be in the state of wudu. Okay? Tawaf, when you go for Umrah or Hajj, there is one tawaf that is a, wajib thing. It's like part of the necessary part of the Umrah or the tawaf or the Hajj, sorry. Those tawaf are just like prayer in that you need to be in the state of wudu. If once you're done your wajib tawaf, you're just living in Makkah for a few days, the hotel in Makkah, it's always good to do tawaf. Tawaf is a mustahab action, and for mustahab tawaf, you don't need to be in the state of wudu. For acts of worship like mustahab tawaf or reciting the Quran, reciting dua, it's good to be in the state of wudu. It somehow is the perfection of that action, is if you do that action while you are in wudu, but you don't have to. You can read Quran, you can read dua without being in the state of wudu, and it's not like you've done something wrong. Okay? In addition to that, touching the text of the Quran, even like the shadda and these things, the mud and the shadda and all these kind of things are going to be wajib to the harakat. It's going to be wajib to be in the state of wudu if you're touching the Quran. The name of Allah in any language, in Arabic, English, if you're touching the name of Allah, it's wajib to be in the state of wudu. When it comes to the names of the Ahlul Bayt, we have differences of opinion amongst Maraja. Ayatollah Khamenei says, ihtiyat wajib, you should be in the state of wudu. Ayatollah Sistani says, it's not required. So, even people following Ayatollah Khamenei, they could do ruju over here. You want to touch the name Muhammad or Ali, peace be upon them. You can do that without the state of wudu. Okay, so these are all different things that like there's more, I guess, to be said here, but generally, inshallah, that clarifies the idea that certain actions like touching the Quran are going to be haram without wudu. Certain actions like prayer are going to be invalid without wudu. Certain actions like reciting dua, reciting Quran are not going to be proper, but it's not like you've done something haram. You just haven't done it properly if you're not in the state of wudu. So wudu can be for these different kind of purposes. Okay, that's it. That's what I wanted to present to you guys today. If verses are handwritten on paper or printed, would the same rules apply as the pages of the Quran? Yes, Sister Masuma, it would apply. If there is a barrier, like let's say it's laminated, or if you're touching the phone, over there, it's not really like you're touching the text. So over there, that's going to be okay. But if you've written the text on a piece of paper, you write Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim with pen, now you can't touch that with your finger if you are not in the state of wudu. One question that comes up here, sisters, is that what if it's like a word that could be from the Quran or could just be normal Arabic? Let's say somebody says like, I don't know, Inna ladina, but it was just like an Arabic text. What matters here is that is this considered Quran or not? If what you're touching is not considered Quran, there's no problem. You can touch it without wudu. But as soon as it is considered Quranic text, even if it's just like one sentence coded within another book, you can't touch that one sentence that is considered the Quran unless you have wudu. Even if a part of the verse is written as notes for a lecture, yes, Sister Masuma. Even if a part of a verse is written for. Yes, Sister Mariam, go ahead. You have a question?
Yes, I know you kind of covered this earlier, but sometimes I get like a dried skin on my hands that might crack or bleed a little bit, or even like on my lips, let's say. So like a little bit of blood coming out. Can you do wudu if it's, still bleeding even during while you're doing wudu?
So as long as you make it tahir before you wash it, or you immerse it in a huge body of water. So like if you were by a river or a swimming pool, some amount of water that is kur. We'll learn about this, you probably know. So kur water, even if you put some blood in kur water, it's still gonna be tahir. So either you do wudu by immersing that body part and you immerse it in kur water, or you have to actually make it tahir before you wash that part.
Okay, so if there's a chance that if I wait a little bit longer and
Yeah,
that
yeah.
skin might clot and might stop bleeding, then maybe it's best to just wait until then.
Yes, yes. Otherwise, you can like if you're not immersing it and you want to just wash it normally while it's continuously bleeding, that would be a problem. That
So
wouldn't
it
work.
doesn't matter the amount, like even if it's just like a small amount of blood, or does
Yeah,
that apply
because
to
that's
all? Okay,
no, I think even that small amount would be a problem.
okay,
Yeah,
all right.
okay,
Thank you.
no problem. Sister Hannah?
I have two questions. So the first one is, let's if you have for the Quran verses, if you have someone like print a card or something out and has like Bismillah or something on it, when we wanna like if we don't need the card anymore, are we allowed to shred it to dispose of it, or we should not do that?
That's a good question. That's an important question. So, what is not allowed here is there's two things. There's one general principle which every marja would agree with, that we're not allowed to do anything that shows disrespect to the Quran or to the name of Allah. Beyond that, some maraja may have specifically identified that burning is definitely disrespectful. So, regardless of like what you say is your urf, you can never burn the Quran. Okay, so I think Ayatollah Sistani has some things like that. But generally, what's important, obviously, nobody's going to burn. What's important is this idea of not showing disrespect. So if we dispose of it in a way that is not disrespectful, that's going to be okay.
Okay. And my next question was similar to Sister Mariam's question about blood. Let's say you have a small amount of blood in an area of wudu, but you decide that you're gonna make it tahir later, but during wudu you don't remember to make it tahir, and you've already done your wudu and you remember later on after namaz, or even if there's time to namaz. Like my first question would be like, would that najasat first like spread because your intention was to clean it, but you forgot, or and is the wudu still accepted?
So, actually, even going back to Sister Mariam's question, one thing that comes to my mind, sisters, is that if it's just a tiny amount of blood, it's very likely that, you can just wash it quickly and it would become tahir. Unless it's like continuously the blood is flowing, when you're washing your face, you're probably going to put water like 2 times on that area. Let's say your lip had a tiny amount of blood on it. And so it would become tahir as you're washing your wudu. You're washing your face for wudu, right? If that's the case, then you're fine because you've made it tahir. But of course, you're supposed to make it tahir and then wash it. But if it's something like blood, even just washing it once would make it tahir. We'll come to this later on, that how do you make something najis tahir? for something like blood, even just washing it one time with qalil water is going to make it tahir. So if there is a way that Sister Hana or Sister Maryam, it can become tahir while you're doing the wudu, then you're gonna be okay. So you don't want to fall into like too much doubt over here and say that, oh, it was najis and I did wudu, so now najasat got everywhere. Unless you're absolutely sure that that happened, you don't need to worry about that. Yeah, Sister Maryam?
So essentially, all that matters is that it's tahar as you're doing wudu. But if it maybe bleeds a little bit after you do wudu, it's still okay.
That's for sure okay.
Yeah.
But like as you're doing the wudu, if you make it tahir and then wash it again, you're definitely fine. I don't think you can on the same one wash make it tahir and also count that as your wudu. You do need to do two washes. One that would be making it tahir, the second one would be the wash of wudu.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Yeah, so we are at the end of time. If any sisters need to go, please don't worry. If Sister Hannah, did that answer your question or?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, if anybody has any other questions, Bismillah, otherwise we can leave it at that. Oh, somebody else has asked a question. Just to clarify, if there is a small cut on your arm with dried blood, you can make it tahir by washing it once and then once again for wudu. Sister Fatima, if you've made it tahir, then one more time for wudu is definitely going to be fine. But now, if you have the blood there, you may need to somehow remove it and then wash it once to make it tahir. Okay, so like I think generally the answer to your question would be yes, it's fine. Like in one wash you're gonna make it tahir. But when we talk about how to make something tahir, the idea is this that you remove the najasa and then you wash it one time in the case of anything other than urine. For urine, two times you have to wash it if it's qalil water. Okay, so I hope that is clear. Inshallah.
Sorry,
Okay,
just to clarify on that answer.
yeah.
So what do you mean by remove it? Like if it's a cut, like let's
Mhm.
say the cut has stopped bleeding
Is there
and
blood there? I mean, like, just with like a tissue, for example, even if you were to like remove the red blood, now
yeah,
you just need to wash it one time and it's tahir.
okay. Even if it's like an open cut.
If it's an open cut and the blood is continuously coming, no, it's not going to become tahir. But if there's no blood that comes out, then as soon as you washed it once, it's tahir right now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you just have to, but so my question is like while you're doing wudu, then you
Hmm.
can you can also make it tahir. It doesn't have to be
Yes,
before like the niyat of your wudu that okay,
definitely.
now I know everything is tahir, then I start my wudu. Like you can
No.
wash it while doing wudu.
That's for sure. I was reading that just today that that's totally fine that you can start your wudu while it's najis and then just before you wash that part, you make it tahir and then wash it. That's fine.
Okay. So basically, sorry, just to confirm, because I'm just like thinking of how this would happen. So like let's say there is like a cut that hasn't been made tahir yet. It's not bleeding. Um, and the blood has been removed. So now I wash my face and I put water over my hand. Do I wipe it first to make it tahir, or that's now it's
You just pass the water. You kind of
oh
pass
okay.
the water, you pass water over it and it becomes tahir. Now again, like here we'll talk about these things later on when we talk about najasat and taharat. You don't need to be overly worried, but at the same time, if that water kind of that you passed over the najis area, if it now kind of trickles down to other parts of your hand, it would make the other parts of your hand najis. So you kind of need to, normally you just kind of put the water on it and let it come off or mop it up or dry it. Or, if you kind of quickly like move that water out of the way, that would be okay as well. Overall,
Okay, so
overall, if you have an area, like let's say that what you said, you had a cut, you removed the
yeah,
blood, right? So that skin is najis. You
yeah.
you just need to wash it once, meaning you just need to pass water over it one time and it becomes tahir. Okay.
Okay, so like kind of like putting your arm under the sink so that
If,
it's
if you put it, if you put your arm under the sink, it's really easy. That's gonna be like there's nothing to worry about because then that water that goes on your hand in this case is kur water, is mu'tasam water, and
Mhm.
even whatever drips off is gonna be tahir. Okay, but
Okay.
if you take a little bit of water and you pour it on your hand,
Yeah.
here you need to slightly be careful that now if you're sure that that water has moved down to like your wrist and is still on your wrist, then that water is not just water because it is like a small amount that touched the cut. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Again, we don't need to be overly picky about this. Like it's not like a mathematical like precision, but
Yeah.
generally there is this idea that if you're using a little bit of water and it touched something najis, you need to now kind of mop it up or remove it so that that najasa
So
doesn't stay.
so wouldn't you have to like remove it then in between your wudu?
Which is fine as long as your mu'alat is still there. Like, you know, those conditions about mu'alat that we talked about.
Yeah.
As long as you're not spending like 10 minutes making it tahir, it's fine.
Yeah.
You can just quickly do that and then wash the hand or wherever it is.
Okay. So do the other parts of the hand have to be dry for wudu, like in
No.
general?
So we mentioned this last week. I think that the parts that you wash do not have to be dry because you're washing them. So even if it was wet before, it doesn't matter. You're washing it again right now. The
Even
parts
the masa of the head.
No. So the parts that you wipe, those are supposed to be dry. But now
Oh,
again, if it's just slightly damp, that's gonna be fine, but it can't be very wet.
okay. So like someone had said to me one time that after you take a shower, then you can't do the masa of the head.
Yeah, it goes back to this that if it's really wet, then there's a problem because when you're doing masah, you're supposed to be putting the wetness from your hand on your head. But
Mm-hmm.
if it's so wet that that's not happening, then that's a problem.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem, no problem. Okay, take care, sisters. Fi
Take care,
amanillah.
inshallah.